Hi.
I promised that I would get back to you today, tonight, and so here I am. And welcome again. I'm really thrilled to be able to work with you this next, well, you might as well say it's 12 weeks, but it probably runs over 13. And, this is just such a special course. And so I guess what I'd like you to do is suspend your disbelief if you're one of those that think that, look, I've done all the leadership I need to do, and this is just fluffy stuff. Well, it isn't. It isn't fluffy stuff. In fact, as Daniel Goleman, the Harvard professor, and I guess we would call the father of emotional intelligence, says soft skills have hard consequences. And it's so true. Soft skills have hard consequences. So leadership is probably looking at from the neck down rather than the neck up, and it's about us. It's not necessarily about others. We're going to look at all sorts of different aspects and viewpoints of leadership. It's a tricky business, leadership, and it's not for the faint-hearted. And as another Harvard professor would say, and this is Professor Ron Heifetz, and I was lucky enough to go to Harvard and be in his presence. He's a scary man. Anyway, he says that leadership is dangerous, dangerous work. And that's because leadership is a verb. It's not a noun, it's not your title, is it? It's what you do. And what Heifetz says is it's all about bringing about change, and change means loss. Even good loss, it's still loss. Loss of what you know and what you're comfortable with. Anyway, that's my intro. How do you think? So I'm Dr. Chris Murphy, and I'm looking forward to working with you for the next 13 weeks or so. And that's a few holidays in between, of course, and breaks. And so we're going to have a work out a routine together. Okay, we're going to have a time where whoever can be there for our sessions. And look, they're going to try and be consistent to one day, but that's not always going to work. Okay, but we'll try very hard to keep it to the consistent time and day. And so I've sent out a doodle for you to identify what you'd like, what your preferences are. And I only just heard today from Kat, who's one of your student colleagues, who's in Western Australia, and I hadn't realised that, is the 3 hour difference. And so we might have to, from the eastern states, have to move back an hour if possible to 5 o'clock, so that at least Kat can, if she can, make it at 8 o'clock. It gets a bit late at 9 o'clock at night, really, if you can make it at all. I'll be recording stuff all the time for you, so we'll have lots of opportunities either way to record I'll record our conversations, our webinar conversations, but I'll also record other bits and pieces when, like for your assignments and things, just to sort of fill in the gaps and for us all. So let's just get started in a really quick one for the week one readings. I will be introducing another couple of parts to this. I'll be introducing a quiz where I want you to complete a quiz. It's an easy quiz, but I'd like you to do it each week, and so that I can see how you're going and look, it's not seriously tough, but it's kind of going to allow you to read with a bit of purpose in lots of ways, and also it's a bit of fun because I'll have it as a competition. You get marked, not marked, but there'll be a running total of who's winning, who's got the most points through the quiz. So let's just talk about the very first week's reading, and I've got my laptop to my left. Is it your left? It's probably your right. Anyway, let's have a quick look. The first reading is by Daniel Goleman, the man I was talking about before, Professor Goleman. And he talks about the focus leader, and he talks about that there's three basic focuses you need, or foci that you need. One is self, and one is on the wider world, and one is on others, of course. So it's self, others, and the wider world. And so I'd like some commentary when we have our first conversation about that. How does that play out for you? So that's our first reading from Daniel Goleman, and he's an easy read, and it's Harvard Business Review after all. Now, Harvard Business Review is, in my view, the women's weekly of journal magazines. It's a magazine, not a journal. It's not peer-reviewed, and it's a formula. Great, easy reading. And the good thing about that is that it is easy to read, but the bad thing about that is that it's not really very deep. But it's usually come from good, solid research and given to written in a way that you can pick it up on a flight and read it really easily and get the general gist. And if you want to know more, you can research. But it sort of spoils you, because then when we give you a journal article, what happens is, I get lots of grizzles, usually face to face, not so much online, but it's kind of like, I hated it. And of course it is harder to read because you don't get that continuity, because they're referencing all the way through. And however, journal articles are high quality and are refereed anyway. So the next one you're going to read is a very important one from the point of view of your case study work, and that'll be in one of your assignments, which we will talk about. But this is just a sort of a taster, if you like, before we have them catch up together, okay? And this one's Right Away and All at Once, How We Saved Continental. It's an oldie but a goodie, and it's from quite some time ago. Greg Brenneman was the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of Continental Airlines at the time, and he joined the firm with Gordon Bethune, who was the CEO, direct from Boeing, at a time when they'd already had two bankruptcies and they were heading into their third. So it was a really tough time, and no one wanted to work or be seen to be working at Continental that had such a bad reputation, a bit like Jetstar, but worse up. Anyway, so Continental was there was nowhere else to go really but up, in a way, although they were still heading down at that time. I think they were in the top worst airlines. They were number 10, the worst of the worst. So anyway, you read on and you'll enjoy the read, and we'll be questioning in the case study about this, about the way in which it was managed. It sort of looks a little bit like he did it on his own, and there are other interviews and things that I've seen and read on Gordon Bethune, who was the CEO, who kind of says the same thing. It was him, and although Greg Brenneman does at least acknowledge him. So it's very interesting when you look back at some of these things. Of course, Continental was absorbed or taken over with another airline in the States. But it's a good read from the point of view of looking at some of the theories, some of the models, and comparing how this organisation managed to meet or not meet some of those key requirements noted in your other readings. So it's a nice base. Oldie but a goodie. Okay, so that's a good read, easy read. So you've got two really easy reads to start with, and we'll be asking you questions, of course, about those things. The third one is, look, there's a real problem with putting in these readings a year or two ago. Now, we always had, at least I think there was an interview and also an article written about Carlos Ghosn as being, the guru of Nissan, Nissan. and of course now he's a wanted fugitive. So you know what a difference a day makes, or a week or a year. So Carlos, of course, has been slipped off the reading list all of a sudden, as you do. You know, like a lot of these articles, people fall from grace, or the companies go bust, even though they were an exemplar a year or two earlier. That happened, of course, after the global financial crisis. So this third one is on Ginny Rometty from IBM. And of course, as we know now, she's been given the heave ho in January of this year. So, ooh, again, but read it and enjoy. And but you know now, if you didn't, sorry about the spoiler alert, I didn't give you one. So we'll look at that and have a chat. But you know, what's said in these things are, as I say, what a difference a year makes. And then, of course, we have Lord. Is it Lord? I think it is Lord Villamoria, and he's a peer in the London, the UK Parliament, and his story about Cobra Beer and how he you know, faced difficulties and challenges and so on. So that'll be an interesting read for you as well. All Harvard Business Review, so it's all easy reading. With pictures, 8 pages. Formula. And then there's Alibaba IPO. Now, he was a very, very young man then, 21 years ago. Nothing like keeping up to date, I say. Anyway, so, and again, it's interesting looking back at this young man at the time and his amazing, meteoric, if you like, growth. So, sorry about that. My iWatch went off. There are our readings for this week. I am going to not do too much on the theory just yet, just tonight, because I'll lull you into a sense of comfort to start with. We'll get on with the actual discussions. I will do a separate video on the assessments, and of course I'll record our discussions when we decide on a night this week. It's looking like a Thursday or a Friday night, and of course I'll record it for those who aren't going to be there. We'll set up a routine around the way in which these webinars go and how we're going to sort of run them. And but in the meantime, I'm looking forward to working with you. I'm looking forward to hearing your views, reading the discussion board questions, and I'll be, you know, adding little responses here and there to what I'm reading. And you know, there's no wrong or right answer. They're just an answer and your views, and bringing in your own experiences. I don't want those discussion board entries though to be all referenced, because what will happen is, you know, if you start doing that, then when you are really pushed for time, you'll keep putting off doing it. And although the Canvas says, in this course says that, you know, there's no reason why you have to necessarily answer the question in the week that it's relevant to, I am strongly encouraging you to do so, simply because going back and adding it later means I don't get to read it. I'm not going to go back and read week ones in week 6. So if you do it in week 6, I don't get a chance to read it. None of your other colleagues get a chance to see your views, and it becomes a bit, you know, what's the point? Other than, of course, it's part of your requirement, but I want you to be committed to the course. I want you to be able to read. It's not hard, honest. What is harder is you thinking about it from your own perspective and giving your views in relation to that. So I don't want you to feel that you have to reference these discussion board. I emphasise discussion board only. You will be referencing your other assessment pieces, but in this case I don't want that putting you off, because if you start doing that you'll think, oh, I don't have time. And so I want you to read, respond, and then we'll move to the next week. So try and keep it within the week of of the actual readings and articles. Okay? So I'm going to sign off now because that's enough time for you to watch your video, and I'll look forward to seeing you sometime towards the end of the week. Okay? Sayonara. Bye.